On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, the Houthi are still attacking ships in and around the Red Sea. What impact is that having on global shipping? We're going to look at the Red Sea in 10 charts. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So, a lot of people are asking me, what impact do these Houthi attacks have on me, the consumer, or the shipper of goods around the world? Well, we're going to take a look at 10 charts in 10 minutes. We're going to bang through these, give you all you need to know quick and fast with a lot of facts. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. All right, first, let's look at the number of attacks and where they're taking place. This is a chart put together by the European Union's Operation Atalanta. This is their anti-piracy patrol. However, they are also covering this region in terms of the Houthi attacks. On the left side here, you'll see the names of the ships all color-coded so that you can find them here in the Red Sea. This is Yemen. This is the region where you basically have it all the way from the northern region up here, border with Saudi Arabia, all the way down to the Bab el-Mandeb and Permin Island down here. This is where the Houthi are based. And then this chart breaks down the information even further by date, name of vessel, the ship's ID numbers, their flags, positions, and what type of attack took place. Not all these attacks took place in this region. There are some attacks off the coast of Somalia and up in the Arabian Sea. This chart from Marine Traffic shows you the world positions of all the major container ships on about 16 December to 25 December. These ships represent container ships over 8,000 TEU. TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit. Basically, two 20-foot units equal an FEU. A 40-foot equivalent unit is about the size of the containers you see going up and down the roads. What's to notice on here is how the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb and the Gulf of Aden get absolutely deserted of vessels. This is because of those diversions being caused. Container ships are the ones being diverted because of their high value. That means the war risk insurance, the extra money you have to pay to insure these ships, is much more expensive. And so instead, the ships are heading from Asia to Europe via South Africa. What does that entail? Well, if you're heading from Asia to the East Coast of the US, that's 6 extra days. That's 17% longer. If you're heading from Asia to Rotterdam, that's 10 days, that's 30% longer. And if you're heading into the Mediterranean to a port like Genoa, that is an extra 15 days or 57% longer, a substantial increase. Let's break this down by a few other metrics. This comes from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund's Port Watch. This chart specifically was compiled by Jim Bianco and his research company. This looks at the metric tons of trade transiting the Bab el-Mandeb, that narrow little strait at the bottom of the Red Sea that separates Yemen from the Horn of Africa, Djibouti, and Eritrea. You'll notice here that volume of trade has been increasing since 2018, when it was right around 4 million tons, peaks up here on May 24th. At 5.911 million tons. On November 27th, it was at 5.5 million tons. And then on January 2nd, plummeted down to 2.6 million tons. You may be asking about this other figure down here. This is March 31st of 2021. This is when Ever Given got stuck in the Suez and shut it down for 6 days. This is the number of ships transiting the Bab el-Mandeb on a 7-day average. You'll see on June 5th of 2023, it peaked with 56 ships going through the straits on a given day. On November 24th, it's down to 53 ships. And then on January 2nd, down to 28 ships. And we could expect to see that number fairly well stabilize now at right around that level, unless attacks increase and more ships of different types begin to divert, tankers, bulkers. But right now, it's largely limited to container ships going through. This next chart shows you ships transiting through the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is the very north end of the Red Sea. Each ship going through, on average, costs about $500,000 to go through. The Suez Canal usually sees about 17,000 ships a year go through, that generates a value of $9 billion for Egypt. Again, this big dip you see right here is Ever Given shutting everything down for a few days. But then what you see here is this fall from over 80 ships a day going through the canal. One of the big things that the Suez Canal did in 2015 was expand the canal so they can go from having 50 ships going through to 90 ships. They added a 2-lane section. That 2 lanes allowed more ships to go through. But you see here on January 4th, a drop down to 55 ships per day. You got to go back to literally almost 2020 to find less traffic going through. And the vast majority of that traffic is taking place here in this pink section. Those are cargo ships. Cargo ships are bulkers, dry cargo ships, roll-on, roll-off carriers, but this is being represented largely by the lack of container ships going through. You have a slight drop in tankers, but nothing significant at this point. Next chart shows rates. So how much is it costing to move your containers around the world? The Drewry World Container Index looks at this, and these are 4 rates that were taken as a snapshot of what is happening. So the Shanghai to Rotterdam rate has jumped from about $1,400 up to over $3,500. So we're seeing almost a 115% jump of that rate. Now, this percent jump is over the last week. When you look at the Shanghai to Los Angeles, which is not being affected at all by the Suez, but is being affected because of the transfer of vessels onto the longer route around Europe, and also because there's more demand now to get cargo onto ships heading to the west coast of the United States. That has jumped 30% from a little bit over 2,000 to almost 2,700. Shanghai to Genoa, this is that long diversion we talked about. It has jumped 114%. It's the highest one right now, just over 4,000. And then the Shanghai to New York is up 26%. What most people don't realize is that a lot of the containers that are going from Asia to Europe are transloaded and shipped over to the east coast of the United States. About a third of all the cargo on this route eventually winds up on the east coast of the United States. Let's expand that chart a little bit and look at where the rate compares to the supply chain crisis. So back prior to 2020, you see the rates were fairly flat and even, very similar to what we see post-COVID here, where the rates kind of really stabilized out. The big hump you see here is the supply chain crisis, all the way from 2020 to 2022. And remember, during the supply chain crisis, the big issue we had was the fact that the world was demanding basically twice as many goods as before. Everybody shifted to home, and so our consumption changed. And the ocean carriers and shippers had to ship over goods for both a COVID economy and a pre-COVID or post-COVID economy. And so what we wound up with was excess goods coming in, a lot of cargo coming in that jammed up the ports and drove freight rates to this ridiculously high level, where you see, for example, here on a Shanghai to Rotterdam route of over 15,000. Well, if you look right here, we're seeing that upward tick right here, very similar to what we saw at the beginning here in late 2020, when rates begin to climb precipitously. Do I think they're going to go up to the COVID levels? No, but definitely an uptick. How many ships are we specifically talking about? Again, over from Drewry. This is their Far East to Northern Europe and back, 224 ships. If you look at the South Asia to Northern Europe and Med, 233 ships. The Far East to the Med, 131 ships. From South Asia to the East Coast of the United States or North America, 148 ships. And from the Far East to the East Coast of North America, 85 ships. This is 881 ships that are being impacted by having to sail around Suez. This means also issues with additional fuel cost. Ships are going to have to bunker in places like Durban and Cape Town, South Africa, where fuel is prohibitively more expensive and there's less of it. This means longer sea voyages, which means at least $500,000 extra in fuel costs. When you look at the amount of containers we're talking about 10 million containers are being routed around. This is a substantial amount of containers being moved around. Usually we have about 25 million containers afloat at any one time. So this is a lot of containers that are being shifted around at this time. Definitely a major change. Now, what's the reaction to this? What's been going on? Well, as you know, Operation Prosperity Guardian is going on. This is a map by Skits Intel. He updates this every day with the deployment of ships in and around this region. The Operation Prosperity Guardian is up and running. There are large naval forces present in the region, but a couple of things to note. We are seeing a diminishing number of U.S. ships. We've seen the pullback of the amphibious ready group. The Patan group was moved out of the area into the Mediterranean. The Eisenhower battle group have shifted from the Gulf of Aden up into the Red Sea. This is so they can cover both the Red Sea, but also the Persian Gulf and potentially up in and around Israel with the withdrawal of the Ford battle group. We're seeing less surface vessels, destroyers, in this region. You've seen the pullout of ships like Carney out of the area. Thomas Hudner went back up into the Med. Less vessels. We're hearing about more Allied vessels coming in, but some of them haven't arrived yet. And even some of these Allied vessels that have arrived are committed to their own independent operation. The Indians, for example, are operating independently. Korea, Japan, Spain, not operating within the banner of Operation Prosperity Guardian. And then, of course, you have some other forces at play here. The Chinese 45th Escort Group is down in the area. They have not done anything to assist at all in this. And then there was an erroneous report about the arrival of an Iranian vessel in the Red Sea. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying the vessel has already been there for over a month. There was actually 2 vessels, a base ship and a frigate in the southern Red Sea, providing intelligence to the Houthi. So 10 slides in 10 minutes. I'm a little bit over. I apologize. I tried to bang it in there as fast as I can. I hope this gave you a good snapshot about what's happening in and around the Red Sea with the attacks by the Houthis. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, give it a big thumbs up, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below. You can contribute directly to the page or head on over to Patreon. You become a monthly, yearly subscriber, get access to videos early when I get them out. And also feel free to contact me for any questions you have as a Patreon subscriber. Till our next video, this is Sal signing off.